Arthur had always been a man of solitude. In his long life, he'd worn many hats, an accountant, a recluse, and most recently, a collector. But he didn't collect stamps or coins. He collected puzzles. More specifically, one puzzle, a 17th century artifact known only as the Chronos Box. After 30 years of hunting down its pieces across 3 continents, it was almost complete. Only one piece remained, a tiny obsidian wedge. He finally found it, tucked away in an obscure online auction. Victory was sweet. When the package arrived, he found a small handwritten note tucked inside with the final piece. "Do not complete it," it read. Arthur scoffed. A warning? To him, this wasn't a warning, it was a climax. With trembling hands, he took the obsidian wedge and snapped it into the box's final socket. A satisfying click echoed in the silent room. And then, nothing. The air didn't shimmer. The ground didn't shake. The single ceiling light in his study flickered once, then plunged him into darkness. He held his breath, waiting for a shift in reality, a roar, a demon bursting forth from the box. But there was only silence, a deep, profound silence. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed once. A sense of anticlimax washed over him. He walked to his window, expecting the familiar, comforting glow of the city skyline. Tonight, there was only blackness and stars. The streetlights, the towering skyscrapers, even the busy city traffic, all gone. Just absolute, perfect nothing. A knot of unease tightened in his stomach. He picked up the landline to call his neighbor, Mrs. Henderson. The line was dead. No dial tone, just hollow silence. He grabbed his cell phone, no signal, not a single bar. Panic began to creep in. He turned on his television, hoping for a news report, an emergency broadcast, anything. The screen was pure black. No static, no sound, just a void that mirrored the one outside his window. He flung open his front door. The hallway light was on, a lone beacon in the oppressive stillness. But the air felt wrong. Unnervingly still, he clattered down the fire escape, his footsteps echoing unnaturally. The street below was completely empty. No parked cars, no overflowing trash bins, no gust of wind rustling through unseen leaves. The only sound in the entire world was the frantic, ragged sound of his own breathing. He started walking, then running through the abandoned streets. 5 blocks, not a single car alarm, no dripping faucet from a leaky pipe, no distant siren. Just a perfect, deafening silence that felt heavier than any sound. He stumbled back to his apartment, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and terror, and then he saw it. The Chronos Box sitting innocently on his kitchen counter. It was glowing faintly, emitting a soft, low hum, and in that moment, a horrifying understanding dawned on him. The box wasn't designed to hold something in or let something out. It was an off switch. It hadn't destroyed the universe. It had simply removed it. And he, the collector, had just pressed the button. He was the last man on Earth, because Earth and everything else was gone. In a desperate frenzy, he ran to his computer. There had to be a record, a history, a clue he'd missed. He found an old digital file he'd long forgotten, the original auction listing for the obsidian wedge. He clicked on the small thumbnail image of the final piece. A new message blinked onto the screen, words he hadn't seen before. "Thank you for your final purchase." He tried to scream, to let out the terror coiling in his gut, but the silent, empty world seemed to steal the sound from his throat. The grandfather clock chimed again. 3 hours had passed in this suffocating nothingness, and then a final, more terrible realization struck him. The Chronos Box wasn't a universal off switch. It was a personal deletion tool. It hadn't erased everyone else's universe. It had taken his world, his reality, his universe, plucked away from him. He was the single remaining consciousness, isolated in a hollow echo of the life he once knew. He was a ghost in his own empty museum. He walked back to the window, the black void still staring back at him. He raised his hand to the cold glass, his own reflection a pale, haunted figure framed by eternal night. And then he saw it, a tiny speck of light in the distant blackness. It was moving. It wasn't a star. It was a light source he didn't recognize, and it was getting bigger. It was approaching his window. He pressed his face against the glass, his heart hammering against his ribs, his earlier terror replaced by a new, final dread. The light. He recognized it. It was the dim, flickering lamp from the dusty antique shop where he had bought the very first piece of the Chronos Box all those years ago. And standing beneath it, bathed in its sickly yellow glow, was a figure. The seller. The man from the auction. The figure raised a hand and waved, not menacingly, but with a simple, calm finality. He knew. The figure mouthed a single silent word, a word that echoed in the abyss of Arthur's mind. Welcome. The light from the lamp outside grew blindingly bright, a white fire that consumed everything. On the counter, the Chronos Box went dark, its hum ceasing. And then, the light was gone. The black void remained, but the silence that returned was even deeper, colder, and more absolute than before. Arthur was alone again, but he understood now. The silence wasn't empty. It was waiting for him. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the void. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales that explore the darkness. Until next time, be careful what puzzles you try to solve.